Welcome back to Med Creator 101 Podcast, the go-to podcast for HCPs on all things social. My name is Mimi Banks, and I'm the founder of MB Social, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Dr. Dustin Portella.
And today we're joined by Dr. Babak Azizzadeh, a world-renowned facial plastic surgeon specializing in deep plane facelifts and facial reanimation. As director for the Center for Advanced Facial Plastic Surgery in Beverly Hills and clinical chief at Cedars-Sinai, he is a leading expert in the field. Dr. Azizzadeh is also the co-founder of Persona, an aesthetic concierge platform, and his expertise has been featured in top outlets like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and on Oprah.
I'm super excited to have him here because we met through an organization that is very dear to our hearts, the Global Smile Foundation, a charity that fixes facial deformities in children in underserved areas. Dr. Babak goes to Ecuador, and I have spent a lot of time in Peru and El Salvador with this amazing and incredible organization. Today, though, he's here to share his insights on the art and science of facial aesthetics on social media.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited, and especially Mimi with Full Circle. I think this is awesome. You know, we connected through Global Smile Foundation, but obviously our daytime jobs may be a little bit different. So it's super honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
We're so thrilled.
Before we get into the nuts and bolts of your social media, I always love to ask some, a little bit more personal question just for the audience to get to know you. If that's okay, we can ask you a couple off-the-wall questions.
Sure.
So Mimi's favorite question is, what is the hardest word you learned in medical school or residencies, something medicine-wise?
That's a tough question because English is actually not my first language, so a lot of words have been difficult, but I guess what pops at the top of my head right now is the word rhytidectomy, which basically is the medical terminology for a facelift. And it was, I guess, like, wait, what is that? So I think that's probably one of the words that was like just wouldn't fall off my tongue very easily.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like Reddit.
Yeah.
Like the social media platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this was like described like 200 years ago.
Right. This is pre-Reddit, you're saying? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, somebody, for whatever reason, I'm sure it's some Latin origin, right?
Well, Reddit is like wrinkles.
Yeah.
Right.
Take out wrinkles.
Yeah.
Literally.
So the next question is, do you prefer OR days or clinic days?
OR days, for sure.
OR days.
Yeah. I mean, I love clinic days. I couldn't do like 5 days a week of OR is really hard. I like to kind of keep it to 2 days a week. So I'm like loving it and I'm super excited and I'm super focused. But OR days, definitely.
Gotcha. What is one thing that patients underestimate about plastic surgery?
I think patients actually don't realize how powerful it can be. They think it's powerful, but I think it ends up actually being a lot more powerful and meaningful than they even anticipate. People are much more surprised by the outcomes because they're so used to minimal changes with all the minimally invasive treatments that are out there. So when you get this like phenomenal and meaningful change, I think they're surprised, even though they're seeing so much on social media.
Mm-hmm.
You mean like Kris Jenner? I can't stop thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, there's always almost in every 5 years, there's like some incredible pop, an incredible, celebrity or event that changes things and like really brings out all these amazing outcomes. And definitely Kris Jenner has been that person in 2025.
Yeah.
Or was that person in 2025.
As somebody who deals in the aesthetic world, what do you think is the most overrated aesthetic trend right now?
Overrated. I still think there are a lot of minimally invasive procedures that have a role, no question about it. But I think you always have to look at the value of a product, device, treatment versus the outcome that you're going to get. And sometimes some of the, essentially return on investment is not enough.
Mhm.
So for example, Botox has amazing return on investment. You see the results are consistent, predictable, long, has been happening for a long time. And then I think sometimes super trendy, like new energy based devices or certain things come out, and people just want to jump into getting the latest quote unquote trend and spend thousands of dollars and don't get what they want. So the value proposition is really, really important.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm looking at it not that I do facelifts, but from the skincare to those energy-based devices. When somebody wants to get rid of dark spots, you can buy an expensive cream and you use that for 18 months where you have to keep buying and buying and buying. Or maybe you just take that money and you do a laser treatment that's gonna get rid of all the spots in a period of a couple of weeks, you know? So, I
Yeah, I
totally
agree with you
understand that
100%. I agree with you
that
100%.
value per time put in, so and the last question is if you weren't a plastic surgeon, what would you be?
um, I didn't know a lot about art history, but I love art history. And so maybe I would have become like, a historian of art.
Mhm.
Uh, but there aren't a lot of others. Maybe an entrepreneur, maybe, go into technology. I could see that like doing like computer science and going into technology. But it would still, I like creative. I
Yeah.
really like creative. So um, it still comes back probably to what I'm doing. There aren't that many other fields that I like more than this.
Yeah. Well, certainly you are in the arts, you know.
That's true.
Plastic surgery is a science, but also there's so much art to it. And you've certainly made a name for yourself and you've shared a lot of that information on social media. And
Mm.
my perception is that plastic surgeons have much more than many other specialties been at the forefront of plastic surgery to advertise their results, to bring in new patients, because the marketing component is so important. And I want to take you back to the first post on social media. If you remember what it was, where you were, and what you actually posted about.
I think it was very, very early on Instagram, and I'm just going to start at Instagram because Facebook we weren't really doing. I mean, I've been around for a while now. I like remember when I started my practice, there was something called you know Google AdWords and Yahoo cost per click, and everyone was like, "What the hell is that?" So I've been, I've gone through the process, but yeah, Instagram. I didn't really know the power of Instagram. I knew it was visual, um, and so it was kind of, I think my first post was just a very simple, basic before and after. And my subsequent posts were like introducing maybe my office staff, a little bit of my family. It was more for fun, I would say, than really, oh my God, this is going to be the medium that's going to transform. And obviously, eventually, there was a little hot minute with Snapchat. There was, Facebook came back with a little bit of a different format. And obviously, TikTok and YouTube, all of them now have their own positions and podcasts as well, but it was more of just it was a little bit more for fun than really marketing at that initial era and initial phase of posting. But it was very early. That was like really at the early phases of Instagram.
When it was just photos, there was no video component to it at that
Yeah,
point.
there was no
Yeah.
video.
Was there a point when you realized the power of social media and when you really chose to lean in and create unique content for social media?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't remember the exact transition, but definitely we knew that um, more and more people were, finding or at least researching us through social media. And that's kind of when you know that, okay, it's different. We're seeing like now 10% of patients saying, oh, yeah, I saw your stuff on Instagram, whereas, 90% were internet. And then that transition. And probably right now it's what, 20%, 80%. My practice is a little bit different for the most part still today. 90% of surgeries that I do are still word of mouth, meaning that the patients, I have exactly either a doctor, a person, or some source that has referred that person to me. 50% of my consults are people that are word of mouth. 50% are through social. So social or internet, things like that. So still the people who are ultimately trusting you to do procedures are still coming to me. And this is a very different probably practice maybe than others through word of mouth. And the way I look at social media, it's part of that word of mouth. It's a global word of mouth. That's very, very important. And secondarily, it's a confirmation of multiple different areas for at least the patients who come to me. They do, almost everybody looks at my social media before coming in, even if they're referred to me. So it has to reflect why they're being referred to me. So, um, so the transition was at a time when we saw that social media was taking a more important role in patient research into because it is a very visual and plastic surgery is very visual field, especially with before and afters. And then it gradually evolved and it's morphed a lot for me, from the early phases when we knew it was important till now.
And so would you say that changed how you show up now? Is that this is all about it's credibility, it's trust, it's showing that they've heard of you and now these are the results?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to know your own personality well, right? And you have to know also your strengths and weaknesses. I think the worst thing you can do, and I've made this error, is try to mimic other people or be something you're not. I think that ends up either bringing in the wrong patients to you or actually really flopping. So for me, my personality, who I am, I try to reflect that on my social media, which is like, I feel like I'm an authority figure. I am academic. I am very personal. I'm educational. I think my results are really, really amazing. They're very, very natural, but they may not pop the way that other surgeons create this crazy drastic transformations that pop on social media and they may go viral. My results are finesse results, are authentic results that may not pop that way. So I don't try to do something that's not me. I try to just make sure my brand, who I am, is clearly reflected on my social media. So when the consumer becomes a patient and they see me in person, they don't say, "Oh my God, this is someone different." They'll say, "Oh my God," it confirms them that, "Oh yeah, it is exactly who I thought he was going to be." And it gives them more confidence that I am going to deliver on the promises that I usually put forth to my patients. So everyone has to do something different. For a younger plastic surgeon or facial plastic surgeon or dermatologist or oculoplastic surgeon that is coming out, this has to be a huge part of their because they're not going to have a lot of other opportunities and it's a little bit more inexpensive for them, right? You can do your social media kind of on a very, very budgeted. Whereas if you want to do major marketing pieces and otherwise, it may be a little bit more expensive. But for me, it's all a reflection of who I am and what I want to convey to my patients, which is like, look, I'm going to perform, I'm cutting edge, I'm compassionate, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to provide the best care. I think my results are, in my opinion, better than my peers but for different for you. And if it's not that for you, then I actually don't want you to, come and see me because I don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste my time. So those are all like reflected, I think, but it's really also reflecting on my brand, right? That's really important. My brand is not, oh, go party and pop champagne and go, on my jet here and there. That's not my brand, right? My brand is I think I'm a very nice guy. I'm very cutting edge. I'm at the top of my game. I'm very, very, very caring for my patients, and I'm a leader in the field. So that's what I'm going to reflect in my social.
But this is actually a very interesting conversation because when Dustin started his social, it was by means of marketing and trying to get the his start to have his brand out there. And we haven't really talked a lot, Dustin, about this notion of branding, like as an extension, and how you're generating awareness and your brand is you're extremely aware of the content and what you're putting out there um, to attract that right audience.
I think that's incredibly insightful, the way that you show up authentically, because I also made that mistake early on as I wanted to showcase a lot more aesthetic results, and then I kind of found out I don't like doing filler that much, and, I love lasers more and Botox more, but I didn't want the filler patients, but I was advertising a lot of those before and afters because you can see something very quickly, and so I think as people that want to get on social media for other healthcare providers, if your goal is to get people in the door, the way that you've illustrated showing up authentically to be the same person, because you could chase vanity metrics, you could chase views, you could do all these things to pop more for social media, but that's not going to augment your practice in the way that you want to work on a day to day basis.
Very true. And is that the filter that you use when you think about content? Because in order to even have social right now, as Dustin was saying, it's more about film, it's about video. I can't believe I said film. I feel like that's so old. But it's more about, reels. It's not static anymore because it's living, breathing, always changing. The expectation is that you have content. What is the lens that you look through to create content or to share content? Patience. I see that you have, how when to say no. I see that there's some trends on your page, content series. Where do you get your ideas or what does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a moving target. And I have to say, like this year, for instance, I mean, meaning 2025 going into 2026, I made a very conscious effort to change a little bit of the directionality and really hone it in more on like very, very high level discussions, high level like press. If I'm like on, Wall Street Journal, Goop, Hollywood Reporter, discussing that and making those topics that maybe I do a talking head or maybe I do, a carousel on it and so forth, making sure that the brand, that whatever we're posting aesthetically flows better. If you look at my 2025, grid, I think it looks aesthetically a lot better and it doesn't have a lot of fluff stuff. It has like real deal content. It doesn't mean again it's taken like I have more views or more hits or more whatever it is. It's more kind of again brand oriented, high level target, high level before and afters. Either and I usually kind of think about what I want to do, what we want to talk about, topics that I think are relevant are happening. We'll do discussions about that, which will become reels. We'll try to test some stuff out, some before and afters. Again, before and afters are kind of all very, very, you don't know what's going to like really pop or what's going to be, but try to put, before and afters that are relevant. And, I do really my practice, I do deep plane facelifts, I do facial reanimation, and I do some rhinoplasty. I really took my main Instagram account, which is Dr. Azizzadeh, and really honed it in on the aesthetic and moved because I have a facial paralysis account at Facial Paralysis Institute. I moved all my facial reanimation stuff onto that. And I feel like that's also really important because the facial reanimation stuff obviously is like really to my heart. I love it. It's a lot of what I do on my medical mission trips. I love the patients, but they were almost like just competing with one another. And so that separation, I did that on purpose. I don't know if that's going to long term be positive or negative. I mean, I still will have some facial paralysis stuff and facial reanimation stuff on my main account. But for the most part, my main account has become really hyper focus on my aesthetic, and the Facial Paralysis Institute continues to be hyper focused on the facial reanimation. So some of this stuff has been really, really, I think, directionally changed, which we'll see how it works out. I think it's in a positive way, um, but um, but these are all directions that I kind of like guided, and then I have I have someone on my staff that comes in videos and so forth, and we're like, for example, today I had two patients. I had a patient who I did her first facelift 22 years ago, and I just did her second facelift a few months ago. And this is a great story. She looks lovely. She's 70. And, I sat down and talked to her and said, hey, so we videoed that. Then there was another patient who's 79 that I just did revision facelift for, and she's lovely. So kind of these are all ideas that we kind of on. I kind of work on, and I have a couple of people in the office that will help me as kind of their role to edit things and so forth. I don't have time to do that, film things, and but again, it's got to be, I think, authentic to you, and when it is, I think it ends up working out well for you.
Yeah, I think that's important to not be afraid to take a risk. You changed your strategy on social media, and there's times when creators have to do that to make sure that they're staying authentic and true to what they're trying to accomplish. You mentioned a little bit about some people in your office that are helping you film and edit. I want to get a little more into kind of that behind the scenes stuff. If your content is you're kind of filming as you go throughout the week, if you batch record when you have ideas and you set aside time for that, doesn't sound like you're doing the editing yourself, but what does the workflow look like from the nuts and bolts of filming to posting, and who helps you with that?
Yeah, so I have I have one main person that is very involved, and then a couple of other people in our office that help out. But for the most part, I would say the limiting factor is my time, because I want to make sure I edit or I review and I make changes to the copy and to everything that's put together. Even if it's done really well, we'll go back and forth. The the discussions that I sometimes talk about, topics I talk about, they need to set aside time. And I'm traveling, I'm speaking here, I'm going on medical missions. You saw how hard it was to arrange this. It's like, it's pretty hard. So my time is a little bit limited with that. And then we have press coverage that sometimes, like I just did this Bloomberg News uh, interview today. It may come out on Thursday. So I want to try to get that on our social on Friday. But we're not amazing at planning it. I'll be honest with you. We have to get better with that. But we have a game plan of, like, okay, we're going to do it before and after, maybe once a week, do a press once a week, do some, I'm like, for example, I just went to Dubai. I was a keynote speaker at a major conference there. I just went to Bogota. I was a keynote speaker there. Kind of the timing of the Dubai one, we should have posted it earlier, but I couldn't get the content to my team early enough to put it together. So sometimes it just doesn't work out. I would say that the flow is one area that we need to get better, and the planning is one area that we need to get better.
And from a setup perspective, do you usually film content in your office? So, like, outside of PR, outside of some of these. So, if you have a patient story, for example, do you use your phone? Do you mic people up? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, most of the time we do it in the office on the iPhone. Everything's done pretty much, um, with and we do use mics. Like today when we videoed those two testimonials, we use mics on them. Um, and we're getting better with that. I have to again, we're trying to up our game because you're constantly, trying to improve. And it is getting better. I think, again, if you look at my 2023 quality, versus 24 versus 25, I do think we've had continuous improvement in the quality. But I also I know some people like always do a selfie, you know, communication. I don't do that. It may be actually the right thing for me. It may be a little bit more authentic. So there's sometimes I'm thinking about how we can change things to make it even more authentic. But right now I'm in this mode of like really, really, we're going to put phenomenal, curated, beautiful content. We can post stories that are not as curated, but if it's going on the grid, I want it to be very clean, match my aesthetics, match my brand, and not have something that's off brand. And I also get invited a lot to, you know, when somebody, has you become, what is it called? Why am
Oh,
I
the collab posts?
collab posts.
Hmm.
So that's happening a lot more. And then, you get into a situation, are you going to accept it, not accept it? It's like 5 p.m. It's not the time you want to post it. It's not the aesthetics that you want. You don't want to offend the people that asked you. So that's also something that like gradually I think is going to become a bigger and bigger part of the process. But it's also very good because it really kind of increases your visibility. So I like the collab posts too.
Another question is, you were recently elected, you're the president elect for the American Society for Facial Plastic Surgery. And I'm sure I got the acronym wrong on that, but
AFPRS, yes.
AFPRS. Now, you are a true leader in the field. To be able to get that, you've earned the respect of your colleagues, you've been actively involved. And so you're helping to shape the future of plastic surgery. And I'm curious if social media for the society as a whole is something you also want to touch on, and how you'll help other, emerging younger surgeons with their presence on social media to make sure that they're successful, because that benefits the specialty, but also maintain the credibility of the specialty.
Yeah, I mean, I think thank you for asking that question. I think, you have to wear two different hats. One is like, okay, you're elected to lead a specialty and you want to create success for the specialty because the specialty itself is an entity that needs to stay strong. It needs members. It needs to develop great educational programs. It needs people who are going to attend those educational programs because financially, you got to worry about the entity. And then how are you going to value add or provide value and lead and help not only young, but there's also much older facial plastic surgeons who've been around for a long time. The younger ones, to be honest with you, they know the game. They are ready to go. It's actually the middle and older colleagues that I mean, they may be on social, but they just don't know the ins and outs and how to focus and so forth. So definitely of one of my priorities is to use social media to improve the position of the American Academy of Facial Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery amongst its peers to improve our attendance into our wonderful meetings, which are really, really incredible. And secondarily, help the members that need help understand this, this medium, right? That may be very, very different than what their current approach is. So for sure, social media is so important. And I lump social media. Obviously, everyone thinks Instagram or TikTok, but it is much more than that. It is, YouTube, it's podcasts, it's so many different avenues, Facebook. And you have to be able to kind of understand, you know, the areas and what you can focus on to be really, really good. And so maybe for someone who is in the latter part of their um, practice and they can't get, the TikTok slash Instagram, maybe they focus on Facebook and doing YouTube or doing podcasts to take advantage of their wisdom. So there are just so much to do, and it's going to be definitely one of my, top priorities to uh, take advantage and utilize social media for our members as well as for the society itself.
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot on your plate, and I think that that's a very worthy goal because the landscape changes so much, and you have these excellent surgeons who still have so much to offer to the specialty, and they may be great with publications, but to continue to market their practice in cutting edge ways, I think that's incredible to also make that part of your work as president when there's so many other things competing for your attention. So, and hopefully this podcast here will help many of your colleagues as well.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I agree.
Dr. Babak, thank you so much for your time today. And we want to make sure that everybody can find you on social media. And you told us your handle before, Dr. Azizzadeh, and we'll have that in the podcast show notes so that people can find you. And again, just appreciate your time. Thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode. We'd encourage you to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.